Hi, I'm Jay Fallon. Thank you for listening to The Slippery Slope. So, listen, there's something that I've been wanting to talk about for quite a while. I haven't really known how to broach the topic, or even whether I should. And what I really want to discuss is some of the situations, some of the things that happened to me, and some of the observations that I made when I was still a police officer, when I was first stood down within the police. So I want to tell this story, and listen, you can believe it, you can not. I'm just going to tell you what happened to me, what I believe happened. Okay. Now I understand some people are going to think and they're going to say, well, Jay, I think you're drawing a long bow. I think you're jumping to conclusions. I believe the evidence was there. I found the evidence. I think I saw enough to be able to draw the right conclusions. And I I personally think it's very concerning. Not just that it happened to me, but that it could happen to anyone in my situation that would want to talk about topics like what I talk about. And realistically, I started this slippery slope just wanting to talk about subjects, how I could see things that were happening in the news, just general things that are happening in our society. And I believe we were on a slippery slope morally, ethically. And I believe that, and I want to put my point of view from a Christian's point of view, understanding that I am not a a Bible teacher. I'm not a pastor. I've never gone to Bible college. I'm just a Christian, and I want to talk about some of the moral or some of the social issues going on in today's society that I thought put us on a slippery slope. Thus, the name, the Slippery Slope Podcast. So, and I'm going to apologize now if this gets a little long-winded, but I'm trying to put in as much detail as I deem necessary to really cover bases and help people understand why I drew the conclusions, why I came to those conclusions in the very end, what I experienced. So basically, around getting towards the end of 2021, it was the very first around that first couple of days in October 2021. I was stood down from the police, Queensland Police, because of the COVID pandemic, and obviously, being a police officer, we were obligated. We were given a direction to undergo the medical procedure. I put in my exemptions, all that kind of thing. And I was stood down because the exemption didn't get accepted, and that was, that's what happened. It's no big deal now. I'm looking back, going, okay, whatever. That is what happened. So up until that point, I'd spent 6 years working as a physical surveillance officer. So you're working in a covert manner. Um, so covertly conducting physical surveillance on people. A lot of people have their own thoughts, their own ideas on how that works, and you know, it's it was very interesting. Look, out of policing, that was where I wanted to be. It was the best thing. I loved it, absolutely loved it. I felt like I was pretty good at it. I felt like I could do a good job. I could be the grey man fairly successfully, uh, and whether it was just doing tracking people and following in the vehicles, or jumping out on foot and doing footwork, following people around. I felt like I was good at that job. I did nothing but that for 6 years. Some training beforehand, and then just 6 years of that. That's it. That's all I did within policing, covert physical surveillance. So you work within a team. I won't go too much into the details. It's one of those roles where I can explain it to you. I can explain it, but even explaining it until you actually see it in action, or you're learning, unless you really know, it's kind of hard to explain. But you're just watching people. Covertly, you're either gathering intel, or you're gathering evidence, just trying to support an argument to go further into an investigation, or you're just trying to gain evidence because someone's been, there's accusations that something's happening, someone's doing something, someone's a drug dealer, or whatever the case may be. I was seconded to another area, which I won't name, but if you're a police officer within Queensland, you would know, because the other area that I was seconded to looked after watching other corrupt police officers and politicians. So, and that's why too, I ended up not knowing I never had a lot of police friends, because, and I didn't know a lot of police outside of my very small circle of people that I knew, because I spent so long, just, you only work in that kind of, under this covert umbrella. So you don't deal with a lot of police at all. You just don't interact with them. So you end up being in a kind of a different world to the general policing world. Now, the reason why I'm telling you all this is just to give you an idea of how the experiences, that some of the things that happened to me since then. That this was my working experience. This was the experience I had within surveillance. I felt that I was very experienced. I was quite good at it. I knew what I was doing within the surveillance area. We also did a lot of counter surveillance training with other surveillance. What do you call it? Units from around, not just policing units, but intelligence units and other organizations, governmental organizations that would have it, whether it be, anyway, just other organizations, helping them train, in turn training us, whether you're helping just train or hone your surveillance skills, or your counter surveillance skills, and this kind of thing. So when you're doing nothing but this one kind of task for that long, over so many years, you tend to get, that's all that's all you're good at. You tend to start picking up on things that are going around you, and observing things that other people maybe wouldn't really pick up on. Now, just to go back a little bit before this, I do remember a few years ago, while I was in my surveillance world, sitting within a meeting, and someone quite I'd say quite high up in an agency somewhere in Australia, just to be as vague as I can, someone quite high up, we were having this meeting, we're just sitting there. He was just discussing, just telling us a few things about what's going on, and what Australian agencies and our federal agencies were looking at, who they were looking at, who they considered to be security risks, as opposed to 20 years earlier. And it started talking about, what happened after 9/11, how the security risks within Western worlds changed, and how 9/11 shaped that, how it shaped the way we ran our airports, the security measures that we put within our airports, and that how after time had moved on, we'd started to see different, what they believe, terrorism threats rising up within Australia. And I remember sitting there. Now, I'm not going to say that I've been I have not been. I'll tell you now. I'm a Christian. I believe in the Bible, but there were times in my life that I just went completely off track. I just dropped the ball when it came to being a Christian, being a believer. I completely went haywire. I don't know. Some people might say I just had a midlife crisis or something, but I just dropped the ball completely at a loss of faith, I suppose you could say. I just completely felt lost spiritually, had no idea where I was going, and I was not living in any in any imagination. I was not living what anyone would call a Christian lifestyle. But I still thought, okay, I still held on to what I thought I believed, and what I thought, this is what I know to be true, regardless of how I was living at that time. And that's not to say that I haven't changed, that I haven't realized that, mate, that was not the way to go. I was just, I was just within my own head. I was lost. Anyway, I'm saying all this. So we're having this meeting. This person is describing what was the new kind of threat that was rising up within Australia, within Western nations, especially, and now what they saw as the new threat within Australia. And when he's describing it, when this person was describing, he was talking about this kind of a right-wing threat, people with specific beliefs, people, yeah. And when he was, I can't remember exactly what he was saying with their beliefs and that, but all I remember was he ran through this list of this people, and this is what they kind of believe, and this is the kind of belief system that they would have. And I remember sitting there thinking, wow, I would actually believe along the lines of some of these things. And if someone really drilled down into what I believed, they could probably throw me in this group of, potential problems. Let's put it that way, just because of what I believe spiritually. Anyway, so we were sitting in this meeting, and I was listening to it. I thought, well, okay, so this is who they perceive to be possible threats these days, or people, persons of interest, groups of interest these days, that they felt that this is who they should be looking at. I thought, okay, that's very interesting that that's the road they're going down. Okay. So just after I've been stood down, and it was around, so the end of October, November, I was driving. Now, like I said, bear in mind, 6 years, just over 6 years of doing nothing other than physical surveillance, nothing other than that. And I remember driving along, and I'm in the city, I'm in fairly heavy traffic, and I've got my wife with me, and I'm just thinking, wow, I noticed in my mirror, there was a few things. I won't tell you exactly what I noticed, but I noticed it was heavy traffic, and I thought that's strange. A couple of the behavior of a few of the vehicles that were quite a way back, it just kind of caught my eye, and I thought, that's strange. That's the kind of thing that I've seen surveillance operatives do. It's the kind of thing that you shouldn't do. But realistically, it's the kind of things that a lot of, especially some rookie or nervous surveillance officers will do, because traffic's heavy, and they're concerned that they're losing touch with the target. And I know, anyway, so I'd noticed it was heavy traffic. I'd noticed a couple of vehicles. I just thought in my head, I thought, man, that's weird. It's the kind of thing you would see surveillance do. And a few more other things happened, and I ended up, one of the vehicles I ended up seeing later on, just happened to notice, just by circumstance, just come straight into contact with this vehicle. And I noticed the driver, obviously he wasn't expecting me. I wasn't expecting him. However, I noticed him before he noticed me. He's obviously noticed me at one point, realized who I was, realized it was too late for him to put his window up. And he sat there very, very awkwardly with me right next to his vehicle, looking at the car, trying to look inside because we're both stuck in an intersection. And he sat there extremely awkwardly in the driver's seat. And instead of looking straight ahead, he had his body physically turned sideways, which is a very weird way to sit. He'd had his body twisted around sideways as if he was trying to stop me from looking in the car, or my wife, because I had the window down and I was like, it's kind of making it obvious that I was trying to look in. And then he made a very weird turn at the intersection we were both at. And when he turned, I noticed inside his vehicle, there were things in there that you would only see inside a vehicle that's set up for surveillance. There's certain things that they have. And I noticed it and I thought, wow, that is weird. I've never seen that in anything other than a surveillance vehicle, or maybe some kind of other intelligence police vehicle. Anyway, I didn't take any notice of it. I thought it was strange. At that time, I was sitting there going, but I'm still law enforcement. I'm still a police officer. I'm still surveillance. There would be maybe, there's other times where I've come across surveillance just by happen chance, and it's I've known very well that they were there. And very well that they're doing another job, and you've just happened to come across it. Other people probably wouldn't have noticed, but you see it and it's like, okay, whatever, they're doing what they're doing. But this time was very weird, but I kept telling myself, well, Jason, it's it's just circumstantial. This is just coincidence, completely coincidence. It's you just, if it was surveillance operatives, they're just completely circumstantial coincidence. Anyway, at the same time, this is all happening in a really short period of time. Which part do I go to? So So all around the same time frame, okay, I think it was just a couple of days earlier to when I first noticed this vehicle. I'd put my car in to be serviced. Now, I'd had a year earlier, I bought myself, my wife and I bought ourselves a Ford, a Wildtrak. So it's a brand new vehicle. Hadn't done a lot of Ks. We hadn't done a lot in it. I'd put it in for a service. One of the services that you have to have, hadn't done a lot of kilometers at all. Was told it was going to be very quick. I remember getting towards the time to pick it up. I was waiting for someone to come and get me, and I received a phone call from the place, the mechanics, and they said, look, something's come up. Didn't tell me what's come up. Yeah, just we've come across something. It's going to be 1 more hour. Which at that time I thought, well, that's weird. It's a brand new car. It's done no kilometers. It's just there for a checkup, basically. You've had it all day, and now it's like, oh, we need it for 1 hour. Very weird kind of time frame in my head. But I didn't take any more notice of it. Didn't worry about it. A couple of days later is when I noticed this other vehicle, these surveillance, what I now believe to be surveillance vehicles. Again, I hadn't thought too much about what happened with at the mechanics. Anyway, also within this trip, when I noticed these other cars, and so we're still driving, my wife and I are still driving on, we decided we were going to head up the coast and try and get away for a couple of days. Now, I've only had the vehicle serviced, was it 1 day or 2 days earlier? The car was delayed at the mechanics. This next day, we're in driving. I see these surveillance vehicles. Thought, man, that's weird, but heck, it's probably just whatever. They wouldn't be watching me. At the same time, we're driving up the coast, and the electronics in the car, this is a brand new car, wouldn't work. I'm plugging my phone in. It's got Apple CarPlay, and it just would not work. It was like, up until then, I'd never had any problems with it. But I'm just like, man, what is going on? Just this thing will not work at all. It was frustrating me because I'm wanting to listen to music and whatever, and my Apple CarPlay wouldn't work. Anyway, no, I'm going to show you something. I'll show you what I come across, and this is, keep in mind, this is in my car. So I'd come across, because I was trying to work out what was actually wrong with my Apple CarPlay. And I was trying to figure all that out. I went through all the settings in my car stereo and going through all the digital settings. I think we'd pulled up, and I was just trying to work out why I couldn't get this music playing, why I couldn't get stuff happening. And when I went into the settings, and it goes into, you know, when you plug your phone in, and then I went right into the settings, and then I come across this. So this, now if you're looking at this, so Closer, it's got Closer's iPhone. Closer, that's my phone. Ashley is my son. For whatever reason, he's decided to stick his phone in at one point. Now, Closer here, I was the last phone to plug my phone into my CarPlay. Now, the previous phone, or the previous electronic device, as you can see right here, ASIO surveillance unit. So I'm driving along with my wife, trying to work out what's wrong with my Apple CarPlay. Going through the settings, Apple CarPlay preferences, this pops up. The last device to plug into my Apple CarPlay since I'd done it was called ASIO surveillance unit. So I looked at it and I was like, what the flip? Now, look at the way it's spelled, ASIO surveillance unit. I had some people, I had a mate of mine say, look, what if it was just the mechanic? Well, that's a pretty wild coincidence. I'm surveillance officer. The mechanic, for some weird reason, has plugged his phone or something belonging to him. This was at a proper dealership mechanics. This wasn't some backyard mechanics. You know, they plugged their device. I've never seen any of those kinds of mechanics plug their phone or one of their devices into a vehicle. I didn't think that was a thing where you plug it in and listen to music, maybe turn the radio on, maybe. They usually have their own music playing outside. But someone has plugged their device into my vehicle, and the device's name is ASIO surveillance unit. ASIO, as in the intelligence agency here in Australia. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, that's a little strange. I think back to how the mechanics had called me and suddenly they needed my car for just 1 extra hour. So that's strange. Started thinking about the cars that I'd seen that I thought strange behavior. They're behaving like surveillance vehicles. Thought all that was very strange. So I'm trying not to, didn't know what to tell my wife. She's sitting with me, but I'm like, I don't know what to tell her. Anyway, I'll skip ahead. So we've gone away. We've continued on our trip. I'm trying to wrap my head around what I've seen. Go away for a couple of days. We come back to Brisbane, where I was living at that time. Now we were living in a unit block, quite a nice unit block in a pretty good area. And in the middle of the unit this unit's in this street. There's a one-way street that goes around the front of our block, and you know, you can see there's all units across this park that was in the middle. And you know, we'd been there for a little while living, And when I remember getting back from a couple of days off, and I'd noticed that there was a vehicle parked very weirdly on the other side of the block. And why I say weirdly is you're allowed to park on that side for sure. But the whole time I'd been there, which had been a bit over a year, I think, in that particular residence, I'd never noticed a car to park at that particular area on that particular angle. And and also the style of car that it was a little SUV. You couldn't see in the back of it. I'm looking at it going, well, that kind of looks like the type of vehicle that our unit used for its technical surveillance, as in, you've got a car set up, and we would have a drop car, what they call a drop car set up, and it would just be there, cameras running, watching a driveway. So that the unit didn't have to sit and physically sit in the street. They could, you could connect to the cameras in there, and you could watch it and say, oh, yep, this is the vehicles coming out of the driveway, and they're turning, and yep, we're all getting ready to go and do a follow. So I'm looking at this car. We've gotten back from our days off, a couple of days away. I've looked at this vehicle, thought it's parked very weirdly. For one, I've never seen a car parked in that way, kind of just out of place. Also, the way it was set up on its angle, if there were cameras in the back, if there were cameras in that car, they would have the perfect, and that was probably the only spot that you could park, and you would have a perfect vision of the driveway coming from our units where I would have to drive out. So I'd noticed this vehicle. I thought that's really weird. And then the vehicle just sat there for a week. Didn't see anyone come to the vehicle, nothing. It just sat there. Just random vehicle parked in a spot I'd never seen before on a weird, funny kind of angle, just sat there for a week. I thought, okay, whatever. Now, there was a couple other things that happened, a couple of observations I'd made, and I thought, yeah, that looks like a surveillance team. It looks just like a surveillance team. I drove off one day. I thought, gee, that feels exactly like a takeaway. What they call a takeaway. When you're watching someone, you've got your target, you do your takeaways and your put downs. So you have your target drives out of his driveway, and the surveillance team is all set up for a takeaway. They're going to take that person away from their unit, get them going wherever they're going. If they have to put them down at another place or something, they either want to monitor where they're going to, or they just want to monitor they're going out of the area, whatever they're trying to achieve. And I was sitting there going, that felt just like a takeaway. The way these cars drove out, the way some of them followed me, the way some of them turned, the way another car came in later on. I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what I've been doing for 6 years. And I'm just sitting there going, oh, so everything starts to fall in place. Now, I couldn't work out why anyone would be watching me. And then I thought about my pastor friend in America who I'd spoken to a couple of times, and I'd been on his show. And his show is a lot more popular than mine, I'll tell you. And I started thinking, because there was some things happening to him, and I thought, yeah, in my mind, I thought, it wouldn't surprise me if people are looking at pastors such as him and others, just maybe getting patterns of life, just maybe getting things down, just assessing, just confirming who they are and that kind of thing. And then I thought, wow, what if, because I'd had contact with this person, because my face, this ugly mug, had been, on his show, and then the powers that be over there gotten in contact with the powers that be over here, and I started thinking about this meeting I'd been sitting in a couple of years ago, thinking some of those beliefs, people could, if they wanted to, look at me and think, hey, you believe things in your Christian beliefs that we could say we don't like anymore. Now, the reason why I'm telling you all of this, the reason why I'm putting all this out, and I'm sorry that this is dragging along, but I'm trying not to I'm trying not to leave things out, but I'm trying to make sure that I don't put in stuff that I shouldn't put in. I for one, I think it's very concerning that we have. I've got no doubt ASIO were watching me back then. I also have reason to believe that ASIO may be watching me again. There's a good chance that they may have a team up here a week ago, just keeping tabs. For one thing, I'll just say this. ASIO, if you're watching, your surveillance teams seriously need work. You can hire me. You can pay me to come and train them. They need some training. Secondly, so getting back to it, that I find it concerning that our intelligence agencies looking at people and the type of people that now they think these are the type of people that we should be monitoring. People with religious beliefs, people who, and I could see this coming a while ago, and I didn't want to acknowledge it. Actually, I would only talk about it kind of in hushed tones with people that I knew really well when I was talking to them personally, or with my wife, discussing where I thought intelligence and law enforcement is going to go, especially when it comes to who they perceive to be some kind of threat. And it was definitely my belief that, and it is my belief that eventually Christians, I've thought for a long time that people who believe in the Bible, who call themselves Bible-believing Christians, would be perceived, would be labeled as a possible problem, a possible risk to society. Now, the other week we saw in Queensland, we saw our, I think it was a deputy commissioner come out and say that I always forget how to pronounce the name, but when they had the Wyambella shooting at the end of 2022, where those 3 people shot, killed those police officers, and also shot the neighbor. So they've come out and said that this group was a part of a terrorist cell. And I'm gonna bring up what they actually said, so we can just so we can go over it and you can see what I'm talking about. This is Deputy Commissioner talking about that shooting.
Our assessment has concluded that Nathaniel, Gareth and Stacey Train acted as an autonomous cell and executed a religiously motivated terrorist attack. What we've been able to glean from that information is that the Train family members subscribe to what we would call a broad Christian fundamentalist belief system known as premillennialism. It's a belief system that comes from Christian theology. Now, I'm not an expert in that, but in its basic interpretation is that there was a belief that Christ will return to the earth for 1,000 days and provide peace and prosperity, but it will be preceded by an era or a period of time of tribulation, widespread destruction and suffering. Now, what we've been able to elicit from all that material that we've examined, particularly Stacey's diary notes, is, and we think, that a range of different things help contribute to their belief in this system. So the COVID pandemic, climate change, global conflicts, social disparity, all those kind of things.
So they've come out and said, okay, these people had this belief system, this premillennialism. And I did talk about this a little with Pastor Pat. I think it was just last week. And what I said to him, what he was saying, it's concerning hearing the police talk about it this way, because premillennialism is not, it was just it's not some kind of newfangled belief system, something new and outrageous and, unheard of within Bible scholars, people that go to church. It's, pretty basic kind of teaching. I don't understand how these people who had, and they don't explain how they got to this point where what the actual connection is, how they can believe in premillennialism and how that ties into now we're going to go out and start trying to shoot police. I don't understand how that all ties together, because actually, even just being a Christian in general, God says, vengeance is mine. It's his. We're not supposed to be out there picking. You stand up for yourself. You stand up for righteousness. But, you don't go and ambush people, ambush police. You don't go and do those kinds of things. You're not. So all of this to say that I believe that, and I've believed this for a while, that we will see the day where people such as myself will be viewed. They're already viewed in some circles, but it'll be put out there in the general public domain that people such as myself, Christians with just what I would have considered to be a basic fundamental beliefs, biblical, Bible-based beliefs, are considered radicalists, extremists, a problem to our society. And I know, look, there's people that tell me all the time, Jay, don't talk about religion, don't talk about Bible, don't talk about all that stuff. Just stick to all the police stuff. The problem is, I believe all this is going to be intertwined, because if you, and I was trying to make this point the other day when I was talking about, these new reforms that they want to do with our superannuation. And it's not that I'm against the tax reforms, not that I'm against taxing at all. It's just the way that we have our government, our prime minister, saying things now and, trying to reassure people that, hey, it's all good. We're only dealing with this small group of people. It's only those ones, those crazy people. It's only those ultra rich. They're the bad people. They're the ones that we're going to go after. We're the ones that they're taxing. It's only been a couple of days and the Greens are already saying, hey, how about we go after, instead of just $3 million, we should go after people with $1.5 million. It just keeps going further and further down. There's other issues coming up with it. And why I'll bring this up is because when we just keep making excuses and allowances and saying, well, it's only that group of people, we're only going after the rich. It's just these Christians with this, what they call some kind of weird point of view, premillennialism, or just any kind of biblical view. They don't agree with what we have now decided as social norms, where our society is going. They don't want a one world currency. They don't agree with the lockdowns that came along, and they're standing up and saying, hey, this isn't right. They don't go along with these laws where we just go and arrest people and fine. Maybe it takes 2 years, but we'll drop the charges. But they don't go along with that. They speak up. They try and hold us accountable for the poor, unlawful decisions that we make. But what I believe is more and more is that instead of allowing people to voice their opinions, and instead of allowing people to hold to stand up and voice their opinions and say and talk about how we need to hold people accountable and talk about what's best for our society. Instead of doing that, it'll be like, well, these are problem children. These are the problem in our society. This is the way we want our society to go. So the people with these beliefs, the people with this kind of power because they've got too much money, the people with this kind of thinking, the people who aren't sitting on that way of thinking that we want to sit, they're the problems. They're the ones that we will put under surveillance. They're the ones that we will be tracking. They're the ones that we will monitor what they say. We'll be interacting with social media firms and telling them, hey, you've got to demonetize them. You've got to shadow ban them. You've got to try and hold them back. You can't allow their voice to be heard, which is exactly what I've seen happen with me and my channel. Yeah, so the reason why I wanted to put all this out there now is I just wanted it out there in a way because I wanted it public. And also there's a few other things that have been happening. And I thought, yeah, I need to get this public. Because you never know what's coming down the track, do you? Listen, if I can just go back also to what that police officer was saying about the Wyambella shootings. There is they never gave any explanation on how this this biblical belief, biblical teaching led them to this path of, hey, well, we can attack police officers. I don't understand any correlation between the two at all. How you can then justify physically attacking other people especially because of that specific belief. It's like, well, I don't know. There's nothing there saying, hey, take up arms and do these outrageous, stupid things. I'm wondering whether it's just the fact that they were listening to some people teaching this kind of thing. Just purely just listening to it and then they've drawn their own conclusions, as in the police have drawn their own conclusions, saying, hey, this has shaped their ideology and placed a fear upon them. I don't know. What I do know, what I do believe, is that all these things have been coming together, have been shaping who the government now believes are the problems for our society. And when you have other groups like what we saw with the Hershey's chocolate scenario, and we have a transgender person declaring their rights and saying, well, the far right are coming for me. The far right, and they consider themselves at the center of where society. They're the center. That they are showing us the way of where societies should be going. And they talk about it as if, we're on the right track. Anyone who doesn't accept where we're going, they're far right. And the problem with this is anyone who doesn't align themselves with that kind of ideology will be placed in that far right category. You're far right. You believe in fundamental biblical beliefs. You've got more money than we think is right. So, we'd like to tax you more. We'd like to take it off you. Maybe you should just not have any because we want to make it all equal for everyone. We want to make an economy that's equal for everyone. And we don't think you should have a voice. And if we don't agree with it, we're going to place you under surveillance, monitor you, track you. Anyway, listen, I've got no, I don't know what else to say. I really just wanted to tell you what I've been experiencing over the last, what's happened to me in just the fairly recent history, and explain some things about, maybe it'll help you understand too about why I view some things the way I do. Some people seem to think that I get a little cynical. There's good reasons why I get very, very cynical about the behaviors of certain powers. Just wanted to share something with you, tell you this is what's happened to me. This is what's helped shape me over the last couple of years now. And I personally believe it's only going to get worse. And when you try and hide, try and pull your head back in and say, oh, I just want to go along with it, I just want to close my eyes, bury my head in the sand, and just hopefully the world will forget about me. You've either got to stand for something and stand up and say, well, this is what I believe in. This is what I believe in, and I'm going to stand up for it. Because if you don't do that, and I've seen people, they've told me, hey, what are you doing? You should just go along with it. Don't tell people what you believe, or don't stand up and say, no, I don't believe I should be forced into getting vaccinated. I don't believe that you should have this kind of power. I don't believe you're doing the right thing. You're just putting a target on your back. You should just go along with things. Or maybe, or like someone said to me, it's just because you don't like being told what to do. It's not that at all. If you don't stand up against things when you see that they are not right, then what are you standing for? I've got no doubt the government looks at someone like myself and a lot of other people who are just voicing their concerns for where our society is going. And the government's painted them as they're the problem children, when all they're really doing is voicing concern and hopefully trying to shine a light into the darkness and say, no, we can't forget about these things. We can't just ignore these problems. We can't ignore the problems that the government have tried to just gloss over. We can't ignore some of these issues that we've seen in the police arena where they've unlawfully arrested people and these kinds of things. We shouldn't just gloss over the fact that we have a very woke, sexualized ideology being forced upon our very, very, very young children in public spaces. We shouldn't forget about these things. We should be able to talk about them. We should be able to bring them in the public arena and discuss them openly and voice our opinion and our concern for it. And we shouldn't be placed under surveillance. But hey, if one day I ever just disappear and no one hears from me again, oh, please come and look for me in a star chamber or something like that, will you? Come and bail me out. Oh, don't forget me. Anyway, thanks for listening.